Well, hello everybody. We are once again in our Ambush the Analyst. And if you have not seen one of these yet, make sure you hit the follow and the like button because we're going to have a lot of fun today. This is where people can come to us with a question or their story or something that they're really puzzling, and just on the spot, we will work it through the story code and see what the story code has to offer.
I wrote a blog post a little while ago, and we were going through the different kinds of stories and how they can affect change and be useful for a writer. So when I was talking about satires, I said there's basically two ways to create change in the world. There is working within the system. It usually takes longer, can be frustrating, but we patiently work within that system to create change. Or you can have a more revolutionary outside approach where we just burn everything to the ground and we want to rebuild it. Dramas actually are really good for working within the system. Dramas inspire people to change, and satires are more revolutionary. So they tend to want to beat us up and poke us and knock us down and make us see what we don't want to see in our systems. Well, then I got an email from Susan. So Susan actually is my sister. She's my oldest sister. And Susan had a different take on how we create change. But she didn't feel like she fit into either of those binary choices that I gave. We had Susan in the studio with us, but her connection was poor and we couldn't get clean audio. So I'm going to actually ask her question for her. She asked, I'm actually not interested in fixing or changing the system or old paradigm. I'm working to create a new paradigm, which is more altruistic, one where there is space for everyone. Is there a kind of story that inspires us to create this kind of change, one that is more internal and exists despite the system? So your question is, if drama is a good story to use if you want to create change and fix this current system from within, and satire is a good form of story to be more revolutionary and break down the system and to rebuild. If we're talking about your kind of change, what kind of story would be best for that? Well, we did come up with an answer of sorts. I think that all stories are useful everywhere, but we thought comedies. Now, that might sound like an odd answer, but Amy, why don't you explain some things about comedies and maybe show us how they work, and then we're going to try to apply it to your question.
Yes. So when we look at drama and satires, both of them are targeting that system and saying something's wrong about that system and something needs to change. When we look at a comedy, it is actually system reinforcing. Okay, so when we look at comedy, here I've got my board, and we draw the story cone, and in this second level, we add our world, the audience arc right there. We've got a norm breaker down here, and at the end of the story, they win. But, and typically in our comedies, it's not the norm breaker that's our hero. Typically, it's somebody from inside here that pulls in the win at the end, and our hero wins, and they're usually a comic hero. This would be, I kind of, Susan, I look at this as your position within this dynamic when you're working with somebody and you're coming in with the solution that has been there all along, but just wasn't revealed until that moment. And it's that revelation, that little twist coming in with new information that allows this norm breaker to come in and have a win because of you. And then guess what? The systems also win. And guess what? They're here at the very end. Guess who else wins? We as audience win. That is a structural comedy. Win, 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 win.
All these wins are interesting because normally in a story we feel like there's internal struggle and somebody wins and somebody loses. Well, it is kind of startling that wins in a comedy, but the reason that happens is because we have power sharing at the end, and this is why I think comedies are especially applicable to Susan's question, is that everyone starts off with lots of conflict, and we have conflict in life, But at some point in the story, a common goal becomes more important than winning to the expense of others. And so everybody compromises. Can you show a love shift of coming
Yes.
down from the system and up from the norm breaking position? They meet in the middle. This is very powerful. And it's a compromise. We call it a love shift. It happens a lot in romances, but it can be platonic love. It can be a parental parent-child relationship. It can be coworkers. It can be anybody coming and sacrificing and meeting in the middle. And this means that everyone has to give up a little something. We have to sacrifice for the good of the compromise. So go ahead and show that.
When we look at the romantic one, we have, or the love shift, somebody, they compromise a little bit. They give in. Each one gives in a little bit, and they meet here in the middle. So guess what? Now their story can go forward. And if you'll notice that a lot of the times what's happening inside the story is this unsettling, this everything's tossed up in the air, and we don't know quite where it's going to land. But when these two come together, see, nobody can go forward until there is some sort of resolution or synthesis where they come together and now their story can continue. And that's why I think personally a lot of people feel blocked, is because there's not been this opportunity to, to compromise and come together. And it does. It takes compromise on both sides to get a meeting in the middle. Otherwise, it's not a true meeting in the middle. It's somebody taking power over the other one.
So, Susan, I don't know, does this resonate with you at all? Do you feel like in your work, if you shared stories of people building bridges and finding new solutions where everyone can win, do you feel like that is applicable to the kind of change you're talking about? So the comedy in the story does that, as far as that they win not by staying where they were when they began, right? Everybody moves and shifts and comes together. But the other thing that you're talking about is what we call the return to the fold dynamic. At the end of a story, there's 4 ways that the hero can return to their fold or their system. One is they return to the same system. 2 is they return to an improved system, so their efforts, their journey also improved the system, maybe by taking it down, or altering it. But the third way is the last way is that the system kills or banishes them. That would be a tragedy. But the third way is that they leave the fold for a better one. And I think that's what you're talking about. So you're saying, I don't want to fight this fold. I just want to, I'm just gonna come over here and do my own thing, and we're going to build something better over here.
I definitely see that as creating a new fold that allows people to be their, that new self, or that new group, or that new identity.
My last thought on this is just thinking about, because stories are all about change. Stories do prepare us for the change that is coming. And so I just find it interesting that you've brought up a new paradigm of change for us to think about. And I just think that as people are creating positive change, they're not worrying about whether the system's coming with them or not, is how I'm taking what you've told us today, is that they're just going to go off. And it reminds me of when Mother Teresa said, be the change you want to see in the world. So we're not going to worry about whether we can affect that system. We're just going to go off and be that change. But the more people that do that, in my opinion, it will affect the paradigms. It will affect the systems, because we're just making that change and we're not waiting for others to come along with us. I think that's really powerful.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this Ambush the Analyst. And if you also have a question for us and you would like to ambush the analyst, make sure you post it on our Facebook. Very actively engage on the Facebook page and try to answer people's questions there, because we believe that everybody can learn from everybody else's questions.